Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to start this afternoon's session with a proclamation recognizing National Farmers Day, and that will be led by Council Members Sayles, Balcom, and Lutke.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for National Farmers Day. We wanted to show some appreciation for the hundreds of farmers who call our ag reserve and other places in our county home. We just wrapped up a terrific luncheon. Thank you again to Green Plate Catering for the delicious lunch for today. We also heard from farmers throughout the county about their top priorities, and also to officially proclaim October 12th as National Farmers Appreciation Day on the council, a momentous occasion to honor the hardworking men and women who have dedicated their lives to feeding and supplying our nation. I'm proud to be joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Marilyn Balcom and Councilmember Don Lutke, and the rest of the council to deliver this proclamation. We have over a dozen farmers and organizations represented here today, and we will hear from a few of them in just a moment. If you want to come and join me if you're here for the Farmers Day proclamation, after you can join us now or when the council members get started. Yes, come on up. Everyone from the luncheon, join us. We just want to express our deep appreciation to the Office of Agriculture for helping us organize this event. We are so fortunate to have the leadership of former Director Jeremy Criss, newly appointed Director Mike Scheffel, and the entire Office of Agriculture team, including members from the United States Department of Agriculture. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, Council Members Balcom and Lutke, I wanted to emphasize my full support for all farmers and the beautiful 93,000 acres of agricultural reserve in Montgomery County. This prized gem generates over $280 million in revenue for Montgomery County. It's home to over 558 farms and more than 10,000 residents. We must leverage the Ag Reserve's infinite potential for strategic investments in our communities. And together with my colleagues, I am committed to streamlining access to purchase affordable land, cultivate crops, acquire food, and building permits for new and existing farmers to produce healthy food options. And now I'd like to pass the mic off to my colleagues, Councilmember Marilyn Balcom, and then Councilmember Don Lutke to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sayles, for arranging this today, and welcome to all the farmers. I'm so glad that you're here, and it's great to see so many familiar faces, but even greater to meet new farmers. And so I have the great honor of representing the Ag Reserve along with Councilmember Lutke. We call it the Upper East Side, Upper West Side. Thank you to Dawn for that moniker. But we are so proud to represent our farmers. And I just want to stress that farming is a business. And we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that our farmers are financially successful. That is the only way that we're going to continue to preserve the Ag Reserve. And the partnerships that have come up between our food security, our nonprofits working on food security, our farm to table programs. It's been a great partnership that the entire council is looking forward to continuing and supporting. And I just want to say we are here for you, and please make sure that you let us know anything we can do to help make your farm successful. Thank you.
Clearly, I did not get the memo about what color to wear today. I am very excited to have such an amazing group of folks standing behind us here today who are not just farmers but are part of the entire agricultural ecosystem. And it does take a full system to work collaboratively together for the betterment of the whole. And, in Montgomery County, we're good at saying we're on the leading edge of a lot of things. And certainly when the Ag Reserve was created many, many years ago, when I was little, we were leading edge, but it didn't stop there. It started there. And I want to commend our agricultural producers for their environmental sustainability and for their use of cutting edge technology to improve their farming operations in improving the products that they're able to sell out to us, and always being open to collaborating, again, outside their own business operations and across other businesses and across other community organizations for the betterment of the whole. You are critically important to our county, to our state, to the region, and a lot of what we do, especially in the food systems resiliency world, is regional, not just ending at Montgomery County's borders. And for that and for your willingness to always share and collaborate with us and across government, I am very appreciative. So without further ado, I know there are folks who are going to come up and speak. I'll turn it back to Councilmember Sales.
All right, and so now, thank you, Council Members Balcom and Ludke. We're going to hear from one of our farmers. We have Nia Nyamweya with Beauty Blooms Farm.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Sales, Balcom, Ludke, and all council members for having us here today. It's an honor to be with you to celebrate National Farmers Day. I also want to thank my family and people who have supported my farm journey, Manna Food Center, and LandLink. It's really good to be with you today. My name is Nia Nyamweya. I'm the founder and farm manager of Beauty Blooms Farm. I'm a returning generation farmer, a lifelong Montgomery County resident, and one, if not the first, small-scale regenerative vegetable farmers to lease and grow in a Maryland State Park in Damascus. At Beauty Blooms Farm, our mission is to celebrate cultural heritage through food. We do this through growing majority African heritage crops, providing the bulk of what we grow to the local food banks, and using African indigenous farming practices to build soil health. This is our third full season, and we definitely have a lot more learning to do, and yet each year we've doubled our harvests, and this season, without water access and no electricity, we've harvested 7,000 pounds and counting from under 1 acre. While farming is no doubt a challenging job, what I'd like to share and celebrate today is how the farmers in this room are community leaders and optimists. Farmers are leaders and optimists because they choose to build something positive and feed their communities even amongst many barriers. Many farmers, and in particular farmers of color, lease and do not own their farmland. Sometimes we dance around the why and a bitter truth of our history, that our food system in the U.S. has its roots in stolen land and stolen labor. The land discrimination that resulted from these historical injustices is why Black farmers own and operate about 1% of our nation's farms. Just 1%, and even less for women of color. And even while having to work off-farm jobs to make ends meet, farmers still show up and are determined to feed their communities healthy, locally grown, fresh food. Hope, determination, and persistence are the characteristics the farmers in this room embody. Amidst systemic inequities, climate change, and land access barriers, still, farmers are resilient. Farmers choose to lead and create local solutions to food insecurity, steward the earth well, and work for a brighter farming future. That's why I'm proud to celebrate National Farmers Day here with you. To farm is to love the land and to truly love people. Thank you so much for this proclamation, and happy National Farmers Day.
Thank you so much, Nia, for those touching words. Now we're going to hear from another farmer, Tanya Doka Spondla with Passion to Seed Gardening.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to let me share my farming journey with you. My name is Tanya Dorcas Pandla. I'm a small-scale farmer and owner of Passion to Seed Gardening, PTSGs, that's how I like to call it, as well as a farm and food educator program manager for AfriThrive. It's a non-profit organization, 501c3. The mission for Passion to Seed Gardening, it's farming for impact. And for AfriThrive mission, it's building vibrant, thriving immigrant and minority families through access to nutritious, culturally appropriate food, skills development, and economic opportunity. Passion to Seed Gardening came into being in spring of 2015. As the name suggests, this came all about as a passion from within to practice sowing the seed in the garden and relishing the journey as the seed grows. My parents also played a role in exposing me and my siblings when we were growing up in Zimbabwe. That exposure propelled me into having this passion come into being. Thankfully, through LandLink program administered by Montgomery Countryside Alliance in collaboration with Montgomery County Office of Agriculture, I was matched with a landowner in Laytonsville. Passion to Seed is a certified naturally grown operation. Our produce is all naturally grown in a pesticide-free environment. The vegetables and ingredients at PTSG are foundations for a world of delicious, exciting recipes and dishes from around the world. Besides growing contemporary varieties of produce, we are very much focused on growing culturally appropriate vegetables for the communities of different ethnic backgrounds. PTSG has been partnering with Mana Food, AfriThrive, Community Farm Share in this effort to supply these organizations with sustainably grown produce for distribution to their clients in need and around the DMV area. There is real need for culturally appropriate food in these urban communities, and PTSG and AfriThrive are excited and energized to contribute in this effort by expanding growing operations to include heated greenhouses, cold storage facilities, and other much needed infrastructure to support our operations. Furthermore, in my capacity with AfriThrive Inc., we operate a farm in Poolsville where we focus on growing culturally appropriate produce, which we harvest and distribute to recipients every Friday morning in Aspen Hill, Silver Spring. As part of AfriThrive's initiative, we are also working with an elementary school within the county to establish a school garden. Once all the procedural paperwork is completed, we hope to collaborate and grow produce with the school kids at the school. Farming looks promising and inspiring in the sense that small-scale producers are finally being recognized as an integral part of thriving and productive sector of agriculture. When COVID showed up on our doorstep, small-scale producers played a role in growing and supplying fresh produce in partnership with local food banks, whose platforms distribute to underserved communities. Food prices have significantly gone up due to inflation, and with the recent cuts in SNAP benefits, we as small-scale farmers and food distribution entities, we get energized. We plan to plant and grow more produce for delivery to various food banks through the Farm to Food Bank program. Food insecurity is prevalent in our communities even after the COVID pandemic. I'm always conscious about who I'm growing for. As of today, Passion to Seed has been able to deliver with over hundreds of pounds to Mana Food Bank and Community Farm Share. By the same token, AfriThrive Cultural Farm has produced a variety of culturally appropriate produce this past growing season, and we've been distributing it among our recipients at the food pantry. Injecting more funding to food banks and pantries so that farmers can benefit from such programs like Farm to Food Bank. Small-scale farmers being adequately paid in order to maintain a viable farming business entity is one of the wishes I think that each and every farmer would want to see in the long run. This program is best for both worlds. The farmer gets paid, the recipients get locally grown fresh produce, and this reduces farm produce waste that would have decayed or decomposed in the field. This program helps to bridge the gap in some communities that are not able to afford quality fresh produce, and that is also culturally appropriate. It is my sincere hope and wish that this program becomes a blueprint in the county, in country for that matter, for the foreseeable future. Thank you for the opportunity, giving me this platform to present and share my aspirations and journey in this farming arena. Thank you so much. And happy Farmers Day.
All right. And I think we were going to hear from one more farmer before we read the proclamation. Doug? Doug with Laytonsville Turf Farm.
Hello. My name is Doug Lecklider. I am with Laytonsville Turf Farm. We grow turf grass as well as corn, wheat, and soybeans. And I'll be very brief, but I want to say to this council that as a farmer in this county, I've never been as excited about a council as I have this one, because we may not always agree, but I feel like you listen. And I think to the farmers here, that's pretty important. We're not a majority of the county, but we do like it when you listen to us and we can come to some agreements. So I applaud you. And I'd just like to say that Councilman Katz over here reminded me that I was born into a swine and beef farm, of which I have none anymore. My dad would, at that time we called it a garden, he grew 2 or 3 acres of garden, of which I have never planted a tomato plant since I left that farm when I got out of high school. And I say that to say this: farming evolves, and it's an economics. We are blessed to have this ag reserve, and to make it work, it takes a diversity of farming. These acres have to be utilized, and they need to be profitable to stay in farming. And time will change. My son's farm will look different from mine, and times will change, but the economics will say that, will dictate that. Anything that we grow, this is a deficit state for crops. So soybeans is hauled in here from other states. Corn is hauled in here to feed the livestock that's on the shore and in Pennsylvania and so forth. And we all partake of that. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right, now I'm going to have my council member colleagues join me in reading the proclamation. Whereas National Farmers Day, once called Old Farmers Day, originated when agriculture was much more common in everyday life, with its date set to October 12th after the traditional harvest of many crops, and
whereas National Farmers Day honors the hardworking men and women who have dedicated their lives to feeding our nation and fueling our economy. The contributions range from providing a safe, healthy, sustainable, and secure food supply to providing jobs, promoting agritourism, and stimulating rural economies, and
Whereas the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 was the first farm bill introduced 90 years ago. The farm bill aimed to prevent individual farmers from destabilizing the marketplace by overproducing. Moreover, it aimed to enhance productivity and protect our nation's farmland in collaboration with farm families. And
whereas 1/3 of Montgomery County, or 93,000 acres, is designated as the agricultural reserve, home to 558 farms, more than 10,000 people, and contributes over $280 million to the county's economy. And
whereas during the pandemic, farmers in Montgomery County partnered with local nonprofits and utilized the Farm to Food Bank program to provide local, nutritious food to residents in need, and
Whereas Montgomery County continues to invest in the farming industry by expanding the Farm to Table program, locally procuring food in government agencies, promoting the importance of shopping locally, supporting minority farmers, paying farmers a livable wage, and equitably distributing farmers markets in underserved communities, and
Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes National Farmers Day as a momentous occasion to recognize the tremendous service farmers provide for our communities. Presented on this 10th day of October in the year 2023 by Council Members Sales, Balcom, and Lutke, and the entire Montgomery County Council. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon to celebrate National Farmers Day, and we very much appreciate everything you do for our agricultural lands and community. And to our farmers, thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to join us here in Rockville. We are now going to move to public hearings. And there are 3 public hearings scheduled for this afternoon. The first is a public hearing on Bill 3623, Sale of Firearms or Ammunition, Suicide Awareness, and Firearm Education, otherwise known as the SAFE Act. This bill would require the Department of Health and Human Services to develop literature about firearm safety, suicide prevention, and conflict resolution. It would require sellers of firearms or ammunition to display and distribute the literature at points of sale. It would enable the Department of Health and Human Services to enforce the display and distribution of the requirements and generally amend the law regarding education about mental health and firearms in the county. A Health and Human Services Committee work session is scheduled for Monday, November 13th at 3 p.m. Those wishing to submit material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on Monday, November 6th. We have 9 speakers for this public hearing. I'll invite the first 4 up to the table. Earl Stoddard, Joyce Lippman, Gabriel Kluth, and Beata Stalianos. Thank you. Mr. Stoddard, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Council President Glass, members of the County Council. My name is Earl Stoddard. I'm Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in the Office of the County Executive, and I'm testifying today on behalf of County Executive Mark Elrich towards Bill 3623, known as the Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education Act, or SAFE Act. County Executive supports this legislation and only has some concerns about the enforcement of the proposed requirements. According to the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, there were 26,328 firearms to suicide in the United States in 2021, accounting for more than 50% of the suicides in that year. Requiring the gun sellers provide common sense information to gun buyers about the risk of firearm-related suicide, promoting safe use and safe storage of firearms, and teaching conflict resolution represents a very common sense approach to reduce the risk of firearm suicides in Montgomery County. The only concern of the County Executive is enforcement. As drafted, enforcement of this requirement would fall on the Department of Health and Human Services, Public Health Services, Licensure and Regulatory Services Division. That program is already responsible for conducting numerous other inspections, including those of restaurants, Airbnbs, and other similar types of activities for the department. As part of the County Executive's proposed FY24 submission earlier this year, there was a request for an additional inspector for that division, recognizing their already strained workload. However, that request was not funded, and as such, any additional requirements placed upon this unit will only serve to extend or overextend the requirements of this division. County Executive clearly supports this legislation, so we're absolutely clear. The Executive Branch is considering other alternative enforcement measures, and we'll provide some feedback to the Council. Absolutely, that is not a reason to be opposed to this legislation at all, but we just do have some concerns overall about how we can effectively enforce the requirements proposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Ms. Lippman.
Good afternoon, Council President Glass and members of the Council. I'm Joyce Lippman. I live in Rockville in District 3. I volunteer locally with Moms Demand Action's Gun Sense for Gun Sense in America, and I'm happy to support the SAFE Act. I volunteer locally with Moms, well, I said that already. The Mom's message hits home with me because, as some of you know, in 1966, my father was shot and killed in a robbery. I became the County Survivor Membership Lead to connect to and support other survivors. I can't speak personally to the effects of suicide by gun violence on a family, but I can tell you how the horror of April 5th, 1966 haunts me even now. After my mother and sister found out what happened from a policeman, they worried about me home alone, and they kept calling to see if my husband was home yet. I felt this nagging uneasiness because I knew something was wrong. I felt fear creeping into me because I had always been afraid for my father in this little store in D.C. This past summer, my sister had surgery and I couldn't be there. Unaware that my phone had a glitch that blocked messages, I texted my niece to keep me informed. I heard nothing. Over the next few hours, I tried again and again. I tried my other niece, my nephew's wife, nothing. And I was back in 1966 when no one wanted to tell me dreadful news because I was alone. My sister was okay, but I was frantic, reliving the trauma from deep in my psyche. My knowledge of suicides among people with mental health issues derives from the 6 years I spent on the state's Mortality Review Committee. We looked at death reports in state-funded programs for developmental disability and mental health. I cried over the large number of suicides, so many by guns, in the mental health system. They seem so unnecessary. Without a gun, only 4% of suicide attempts result in death. With a gun, 4% increases to 90%. That's why the SAFE Act speaks to me. As a survivor lead of Moms Demand Action, I'm proud to support the SAFE Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lippman, for your personal testimony. Mr. Kluth.
Thank you. My name is Gabriel Kluth. We're all familiar with Bill 3623. However, I would highlight 4 structural issues with the proposed legislation. Number 1, this is micromanagement at its finest. When you've begun to mandate the display of a particular piece of literature within a particular industry's storefront shops, within a specific area of the store, you have absolutely lost touch with the principles of good leadership and management. Micromanaging is both counterproductive and results in hatred towards those in authority because of forced rules restricting previous freedoms. Number 2, this bill violates the spirit of the First Amendment. Even if the proposed literature is masterfully written and venerated for years to come, still, as a matter of principle, forcing people to display government-issued literature contrary to their will is abridging the freedom of speech and expression. Number 3, this bill sets a dangerous precedent for future First Amendment encroachments. If you can do this to one group of people, what's next? Will you require car dealerships to display anti-drunk driving literature? How about requiring supermarkets to broadcast a pre-recorded government message? Where does this stop? Finally, know that many of the citizens you represent do not want this. Stopping suicides is a very noble goal, and one where we can share some common ground. But good intentions are not enough to create good laws. This bill, though small and innocent in nature, violates the First Amendment, sets a dangerous precedent, utilizes micromanagement to achieve its goals, and fails to meet the people's approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Stylianos.
Hello, my name is Beata Stylianos. My husband, Yorgo, died by suicide with a firearm when our daughter was 5 years old. It never gets easier telling that. Today, I volunteer with Moms Demand Action and as a fellow with the Everytown Survivor Network. I am here to voice my support to require information detailing gun safety, suicide prevention, and conflict resolution at the time of the firearm sale. This proposed ordinance treats gun-related suicide deaths for what they are, a public health crisis. Guns are a product, gun purchasers are consumers. Nearly 6 out of every 10 gun deaths in the United States are self-inflicted. Across all suicide attempts without a gun, only 4% result in death. However, when a gun is involved, that figure skyrockets to 90%. As I was preparing for today's testimony, I was reminded of different memories of Yorgo. One of them was of Yorgo smoking. Yorgo smoked consistently. White and blue cigarette packets, colors of his homeland of Greece. When we were in the blossoming courtship phase of our relationship, Yorgo, which interesting enough translates into farmer in Greek, asked me, "Why do you not nag me? Why are you not nagging me to stop smoking?" Curious he was. So my response went something like, "You have had a privilege of a Caltech education. You were a student of Richard Feynman, who worked on the Manhattan Project developing the atomic bomb. You tutored his junior and senior students as a freshman. So you understand numbers, you understand data, and if there's a warning packet on what you buy and you continue to smoke, I cannot compete with that evidence. I cannot nag myself besides beyond science. So I still could see Yorgo, and he did not say anything, which was not unusual. A few months later, he did make the choice to stop smoking, spend more time in the gym, and eat healthier. We were discussing getting married and starting a family. Yorgo wanted a second chance, living a healthier life, living a life of meaning and consequence. That time, he got it. Tobacco package warning messages appear on cigarettes concerning the consumer's health. They have been implemented in an effort to enhance the public's awareness of the harmful effects of smoking. And we all know that implementing tobacco warning labels has been strongly opposed. Yet, guess what? They work. They save lives. This ordinance is a vital step to ensure families in Montgomery County are made aware of the connection between gun suicides and easy access to guns. I dedicate my testimony to the person in California who was suing me over my First Amendment rights to speak about my late husband's gun suicide. You never think it could happen to you until it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stylianos, for your testimony. Thank you to all four of you for joining us this afternoon. Now I'd like to invite four more individuals to provide their testimony this afternoon. Stephanie Rosen, Joanna Pearl, Alyssa Sanders, and Regina Schneider. And we'll start with Ms. Rosen. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Rosen, my throat does that every time. I'm the Executive Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Montgomery County, Maryland. We're the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for all affected by mental illness. And as the voice of those directly affected by mental health conditions, we strongly support passage of Bill 3623, Sale of Firearms or Ammunition, Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education, or the SAFE Act. Most firearm deaths each year are suicides, and firearms are the most common method used for suicide. I have a whole bunch more stats, but I'm just not going to even say them because so many other people have shared them so far. Suicide doesn't just affect the person who dies, it shatters the family and devastates communities. I want to make sure that I'm clear that individuals living with mental health conditions are not violent against others. I'm talking about self-directed gun violence. Research does show that individuals living with a mental health condition are more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators. This type of legislation can serve as a partnership with firearms retailers to prevent suicide. It's not a penalty. People who sell firearms or ammunitions can be part of a beautiful act of helping someone get help when they need it the most. This legislation is not about restriction. It's not anti-gun. It's not anti-First Amendment. It's about saving lives. This legislation highlights the imperative role we can all play in suicide prevention. Firearm retailers and public health professionals have been effectively collaborating across the entire country for the past 15 years. It's time Montgomery County joins this nationwide movement. It started in 2009 in New Hampshire when a suicide prevention researcher and a local firearm retailer connected after a series of 3 suicides in 1 week involved purchasing guns from a single store. In 2012, the Surgeon General called for health officials to partner with firearms dealers and other gun owner groups to incorporate suicide awareness as a basic tenet of firearm safety and responsible firearm ownership. This morning, I accepted a proclamation on this World Mental Health Day, and this morning I spoke about hope and how hope starts with all of us. Hope starts with talking about mental health. It starts with making information accessible. It starts with providing resources and practical advice. And hope starts with sharing our stories. Hope starts with breaking stigma. You might be wondering how a pamphlet can save lives, but in the spirit of sharing our stories, I live with depression. At a particularly low point, I had suicidal ideation, and I created a plan. When I or anyone is experiencing suicidal ideation, our brain's telling us the only way to feel better is death, that death is the solution. We know that's not the reality. Most people living with a mental health condition respond to treatment and live long, meaningful lives. Every opportunity we have to tell people there's hope and your brain is wrong, you have options, prevents suicide. And I'm almost done. So let's give hope to the many affected by mental health conditions, and let's work together to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. Next is Ms. Pearl.
Good afternoon, Council President Glass and members of the County Council. My name is Joanna Pearl, and I live in Kensington in District 4. I'm a volunteer leader with the Montgomery County Local Group of the Maryland chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. I do this work because I live with a constant worry for my family's safety given the gun violence in our community. Although I am not myself a survivor of gun violence, I regularly speak with survivors, some of whom you've heard from today, who are grappling with the horrific grief and trauma that gun violence creates, and with county residents who feel powerless to do anything about this threat. I deeply believe this is an issue that impacts everyone, whether it has touched us yet or not. And it is our obligation as a community to do what we can to stop future preventable tragedies. I'm here in support of the Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education Act, the SAFE Act, because it treats gun-related suicide deaths for what they are, a public health crisis. Gun suicide claims the lives of nearly 25,000 people in America every year, and nearly 6 out of every 10 gun deaths in the United States are suicides. In Maryland, 278 people die by suicide with a gun each year. That translates to 35% of firearm deaths in our state. And the rate of gun suicide in Maryland has increased 8% from 2012 to 2021. So this is a local problem. The particular role of guns in suicide is devastating. As you've heard, across all suicide attempts without a gun, only 4% result in death. But when a gun is involved, this figure rises to 90%. What's more, the vast majority of people who survive a suicide attempt do not go on to die from a later one. But when a gun is used, those individuals are often not given a second chance. Research shows us that the difference between living to see a better day or dying by gun suicide is often determined by the presence of a gun. The SAFE Act seeks to interrupt these tragedies by requiring information about gun safety, safety training, suicide prevention, and conflict resolution at the time of sale. It will put life-saving information into the hands of each person who purchases a firearm, ammunition, or firearm-related product in our county. I want this information to be available to our neighbors and loved ones in crisis. I want it to be available for my family and for all of ours when they need it. As Moms Demand Action, we know that gun violence is preventable. We know that common sense gun laws like the SAFE Act and the culture of gun safety it encourages go hand in hand with responsible gun ownership. We all want to keep our communities safe, and the SAFE Act is an important step in that direction. I am grateful for the Council's consideration of this important legislation and encourage you to pass the Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education Act. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pearl. Ms. Sanders.
Thank you. Council President Glass, esteemed members of the County Council, and fellow Montgomery County residents. My name is Alyssa Sanders, and I'm the Director of Advocacy at Everymind, a nonprofit with over 65 plus years of experience in providing mental health resources and education to Montgomery County residents. Thank you for providing Everymind with the opportunity to speak in support of the Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education Act proposed by Council President Evan Glass. We at Everymind believe that this initiative is a crucial step in ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. As you know, research has shown us that 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying and potentially treatable mental health condition, and asking someone directly if they're thinking about suicide won't, quote, put the idea in their head, close quote. Most will be relieved. Someone started the conversation. The SAFE Act represents a proactive approach to addressing the alarming rate of suicide by firearm, a crisis that affects countless families and communities across our county and in the nation. By placing suicide prevention and firearm safety information in the hands of gun purchasers, we can make a significant impact on reducing suicide rates and enhancing public safety here in Montgomery County. Mental health issues remain highly stigmatized, making it very difficult for individuals to seek help when needed. By including materials that promote open discussions about mental health, we can contribute to reducing the stigma and encourage individuals to seek assistance and support. Prevention strategies that have been found to be effective in suicide prevention include general public education. Let me share just 2 stories from Everymind's hotline team. One individual had been thinking about ending her life after gaining weight and struggling to make friends in a new town after a recent move. This person disclosed that they had immediate access to a gun, which is a question all of our crisis hotline counselors ask all our callers, our chatters, and our texters. And that person disclosed that they had considered using that gun in the past to end their life. The counselor was able to listen and de-escalate the situation. The visitor shared that the gun was in a safe place and they were committed to not ending their life on that day. On another occasion, an individual reached out to the hotline feeling upset and wanting to end their life. They had their gun right next to them. They'd been drinking alcohol and they'd driven to a parking lot to die. Our crisis hotline counselor gave the chatterer time to talk about the way they felt and explored with them some of the heavy emotions they were experiencing. Through that conversation, the individual recognized some of the reasons why they wanted to continue living and agreed to go home and sleep it off. They thanked the counselor for saving them that night. These statistics and stories highlight the fact that information, education, access to resources, and time can save a life. In closing, Everymind urges the council to support the SAFE Act. This legislation has the potential to save lives, create a safe, more informed community. By providing accessible information at the point of sale, we foster a culture of safety and awareness. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Next is Ms. Schneider.
Good afternoon. Thank you for including me in today's hearing. My name is Regina Schneider. I have been a mental health first aid instructor, NAMI affiliate board member. I have completed ASSIST, CALM, and QPR suicide prevention trainings. And I've been recognized for my extensive mental health work in faith communities. My husband, Steve, who is here with me, is the owner of Atlantic Guns, a Montgomery County designated legacy business. We have been serving the community since 1960. Atlantic Guns has voluntarily provided our customers suicide awareness brochures and information for many years. In 2016, we were honored to be guest speakers at a conference coordinated by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the San Francisco Veterans Administration. We talked about our suicide information and prevention effort, which at that time included brochures, posters, and awareness information that was sent to retailers and ranges throughout Maryland. The Maryland Licensed Firearms Dealers Association, Grassroots Crisis in Columbia, Maryland, and national experts supported our efforts. Anne Arundel County has contacted me quite a few times in the last 2 years because of what we have worked on. Atlantic Guns currently offers our customers excellent brochures developed in a joint effort between the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. These are some of those brochures. The inside, you can look at them if you'd like to later. We also provide qualified firearm safety training, safe handling information, and safe storage information. I strongly oppose this bill because it mandates that we must provide the information we already make available to our customers. It authorizes the county to charge us with a potential criminal violation, which includes hefty fines, potentially jail time, if an employee forgets to hand a customer a brochure. Atlantic Guns and others in our industry are clearly trying to be part of the solution to the serious and complex problem of suicide. We should not be subject to this tremendous burden and potential risk to our survival as a business who follows the laws. We are law-abiding in our actions in all ways, and we have deep concerns for personal and community safety. There is also an unintended consequence of this bill. I am aware that customers who are going to the Anne Arundel gun shops have become upset because they feel when they are given the brochure that they are presumed to have a mental health problem or be a suicide risk. This creates a stigma which must be avoided. Catherine Barber is a senior researcher at the Harvard School of Public Health's Injury Research Center. She is the founding director of Means Matter, a project aimed at reducing a suicidal person's access to lethal means. She is the lead author of CALM, which is Counseling on Access to Lethal Means. I spoke with Kathy this morning. She is opposed to this bill for the same reasons I stated. She said, quote, "Mandates do not engender goodwill and presume opposition. They create enemies, go against good public health practice, are impolite, and create resistance on an issue where there is already some shared mutual concern." We would welcome you to come to our store and see the brochures. They are right at the front door. We have suicide prevention stickers all over the place, and we always have. And we would welcome the opportunity to meet with you to further discuss our mutual interest in suicide prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider, for that testimony. Thank you to all four of you for being present today and sharing your stories with us. We have one person who is joining us virtually to provide testimony, and that is Camilla Manrique.
Hi, good afternoon, Council President Glass and members of the Council. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak before you today. My name is Camila Manrique, and I live in Bethesda, Maryland, in District 8. And I'm speaking before you today as a volunteer with the Students Demand Action chapter at the University of Maryland, College Park. 35% of gun deaths in the state of Maryland are suicide. 278 people in the state of Maryland die each year by gun suicide. When it comes to children and teenagers, 17% of gun deaths are suicide. Local government should begin addressing the gun suicide epidemic that threatens our community. As a college student, I want to ensure that other college students in Montgomery County are aware of the risks, signs, and available resources to get support or to be able to intervene with other individuals. Mental health resources on campuses are not enough, and gun stores must provide safety measures when selling to not only adults, but be aware of the dangers of selling to young adults. Encouraging ongoing mental health awareness and support throughout the academic year is essential for the overall well-being of college students. And I'm here in support of the Suicide Awareness and Firearm Education Act, the SAFE Act. Requiring gun shops to share suicide prevention information would provide resources that will encourage individuals to seek help or intervene when they notice signs of distress in others. It would also contribute to the public health crisis by raising awareness on the correlation between firearms and suicide. It would also reduce the stigma associated with mental health and ensure a supportive environment with those struggling. Selling firearms to those who struggle with mental health increases chances of them using it as a suicide attempt method. Handing out resources with information on suicide attempts with firearm purchases would reduce the chances of individuals committing the act. It would also give those with suicidal thoughts a chance to reach out to hotlines, friends, and families in order to speak with someone. This is a vital step to ensure families across the county have access to resources that prevent those at higher risk from having easy access to a gun. As someone who knows individuals who are struggling to find the proper resources in order to help support system or a safe space for an outlet, I find the SAFE Act extremely useful for those individuals to be seen and to be heard. We must do more to protect those at the center of this public health crisis, and this ordinance is a step in the right direction. In order to tackle gun violence in all its forms, it will require all of us to work together at all levels of government to provide long-term and sustained resources to those at higher risk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Manrique, for your testimony. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon, for providing very personal testimony on both sides of the issue. This is an important conversation. And as I noted earlier, a Health and Human Services work session will be scheduled for Monday, November 13th at 3 p.m. And all public testimony for consideration should be provided by the close of business on Monday, November 6th. And with that, we have no further speakers, and so this public hearing is now closed. Next is a public hearing on expedited bill 3823, tenant displacement, right of first refusal to buy rental housing amendments. This bill would allow the county executive to designate a qualified entity that may exercise the right of first refusal and generally amend the county law regarding the right of first refusal. A Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session is scheduled for Monday, October 30th at 1:30 p.m. Those wishing to submit materials for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business on Monday, October 23rd. We have 4 speakers for this hearing, and I'll ask all 4 to join us at the table. Scott Bruton, Brian Onaloo, Mary Kolar, and Peter Henry. And Mr. Bruton, we'll begin with you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President Glass and council members. My name is Scott Bruton. I am the Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs for Montgomery County. I am testifying on behalf of County Executive Mark Elrich in support of Expedited Bill 3823, Tenant Displacement, Right of First Refusal to Buy Rental Housing. Bill 3823 seeks to address the growing need of affordable housing in Montgomery County by amending sections of the county code regarding the right to first refusal. Current law creates significant impediments for the county to exercise ROFR to preserve affordable housing. If the county wishes to exercise the right of first refusal, it must pay the full price for a multifamily rental property, often totaling tens of millions of dollars, and then sell the property to its chosen development partner within a few hours. The county must sell the property immediately because it does not have the capacity to run a multifamily property with existing staffing and does not want to take on the liability for doing so even for a day. The requirements to purchase the property forces the county to hold tens of millions of dollars at the ready each year just for the purpose of purchasing a property for a few hours. Further, having to conduct 2 sales on the same day increases the financial and labor costs for both the county and its chosen development partner. For 2015 through 2022, the county received 347 right of first refusal notices, but only exercised ROFR 12 times, due significantly to these constraints. Under this bill, a county executive, after exercising the right of first refusal, would be permitted to assign the contract to purchase a property to an affordable housing developer. The ability to assign the contract would allow the county to expeditiously use the funds annually appropriated to preserve or create long-term affordability without the need to reserve tens of millions of dollars solely to purchase and then transfer properties to affordable housing developers. To increase accountability and transparency of the ROFR process, a developer would have to become a qualified entity through a rolling application process by demonstrating experience with and commitment to owning and operating affordable housing. A pool of qualified entities thereby would be available to quickly partner with the county when it chooses to exercise the right of first refusal. DHCA recommends amending the bill to include the Rockville Department of Housing and Community Development among the list of automatically pre-qualified developers. DHCD's omission from the list was unintentional on our part. I will submit updated written testimony to include this recommendation. Finally, this proposed legislation also places a 5% cap on the deposit that an owner can charge if the right of first refusal is exercised. The purpose of limiting a required deposit to 5% is to prevent property owners from requiring deposits far in excess of industry norms for the purpose of thwarting the county's ability to exercise the right of first refusal within the 60-day timeline. I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Bruton. Next is Mr. Onolu.
Good afternoon. Brian Anley with the Apartment and Office Building Association of Metropolitan Washington. Our members support the county's efforts to preserve affordable housing. However, they have a number of concerns with the current ROFR law and the process and the impact that it will have on sales. I've attached to my testimony a letter from Transwestern. They're a member of ours. They were a broker on a sale in Prince George's County, which also uses a similar concept as Montgomery County is looking to do here with qualified entities. In the letter, they note that the use of qualified entities resulted in a 6-month delay to a sale. In other words, it closed 6 months after it would have, and that ultimately that property sold for $6.5 million less than the initial contract offer that they had in place, for a number of different reasons that are stated in the letter. That also resulted in less transfer and recordation tax, of course, to the county. So it's not only negatively impacting our members, but also the county's finances. So with that, AOBA has several amendments that we'd like to see added to the bill to hopefully improve the law and the process. I won't go through them all. Here are the 3 that I want to highlight. The first is, rather than requiring property owners to provide confidential contract information to all qualified entities, the county should be required to do an initial evaluation of whether the sale is a good candidate for a ROFR, and it should select which qualified entities receive that contract information. That's similar to something that Prince George's already does, and that's a 7-day period that doesn't extend the 60-day offer period. Number 2, the current ROFR offer and closing periods are far too long. The county has 60 days to make an offer and then 180 days to close on that property once an offer is made and accepted. This adds considerable length and risk to a sale, as evidenced by the Transwestern sale. These periods should be shortened to 45 days and 90 days, respectively. For reference, a private sale in the absence of a ROFR law typically will take about 30 to 60 days to close, so considerably longer with the ROFR in place. And then lastly, the bill caps the ROFR deposit at 5% of the contract price. Instead, the ROFR offer should be required to match the contract terms, which may be higher or lower than the 5% cap. The bill also makes the deposit refundable in the event of a good faith failure to perform under the contract. But this provision should be limited to a good faith failure to obtain financing. The remaining amendments are in my testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We look forward to working with you all on affordable housing solutions in the county.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onlu. Ms. Kolar.
Good afternoon, Council President Glass and members of the Council. My name is Mary Kolar, and I'm testifying on behalf of Montgomery Housing Alliance. MHA strongly supports Expedited Bill 3823. A diverse, vibrant, and economically robust Montgomery County is only possible if we can ensure that all residents have access to affordable homes. To meet this goal, we know that we need myriad strategies and tools. The county's right of first refusal is one such tool. Right now, however, its effectiveness is limited. The technical amendments offered in Bill 3823 will enable the county to exercise the right in a more meaningful way, preventing harmful tenant displacement. Affordable housing is one of the county's most pervasive and persistent challenges. According to a 2020 study done by the Planning Department, we are at risk of losing 7,000 to 11,000 units of naturally occurring affordable housing by 2030. Losses of this magnitude would further compound the deficit of affordable units we face. As you know, we must significantly increase housing production over the remainder of the decade to meet the needs of our population. Adequately preserving NOAA units, especially along the Purple Line and other major transit corridors, will prevent need from deepening and critically will increase housing stability for the households who reside in these communities. Affordable housing is key to fostering equal access to economic opportunity, ensuring that the benefits of expanded transit accrue to all communities. The opportunity to advance equitable development along the Purple Line corridor is fleeting. If the county does not act now, affordable homes will be lost. As it currently operates, the right of first refusal ultimately results in the county transferring a property at risk of losing affordability to a preservation partner. The proposed amendments merely streamline this process. Allowing a county executive to assign purchase to a qualified entity will alleviate the need to reserve tens of millions of dollars solely to purchase and then transfer a property. This will have a dual effect. It will free resources that can then be used for additional housing development and will allow the county to significantly increase the number of units it can preserve through the right of first refusal. We applaud the Council's ongoing commitment to housing issues, and we especially commend you for recently approving a nonprofit preservation fund. The proposed amendments will work in tandem with these funds to make the preservation process more effective and efficient. Too often, economic development leads to the displacement of low-income people and people of color. This outcome is not inevitable, but preventing it requires deliberate policy choices. These technical adjustments, which are in keeping with the spirit of the law, will help the county make important strides in preservation, keep communities intact, and ensure that current residents benefit from economic growth and investment in the county. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input.
Thank you, Ms. Kolar. And final testimony on this will come from Mr. Henry.
There you go. Thank you very much for seeing me today and listening. I am an attorney and a CPA by background, but I've done real estate for the last 40 years. These were my thoughts when I read through this and studied it. I looked at the Prince George's Code, which was actually very good, and they referenced it, but a lot of the parts were taken out. So, first point, deposits do matter. Most of these properties are owned by small and mid-sized developers and families that have held them for a long time. It's a significant effort to go through and market and sell one of these things. It's tied up for 180 days or 210, depending on how you read it. And at the end, if there's no deposit, my experience has been, not personally, but on the receiving side, somebody takes a shot at it. I got nothing at risk. I'm going to come offer you 10% less. Take it or leave it, or you're back in the line for another 210 days. And guess what? The price falls. That's okay if you want these people to have affordable housing, but you're taking it out of the money, out of the pocket of the people that have worked their lives for this. Second, so deposits matter. Second, financials matter. Right now there's a list of criteria, but one of them is not financial capacity. Nobody would sell a home to somebody with no money. Nobody would lend money. It should be a 2-to-1 ratio is what I face. So if it's a $50 million project, I have to show $100 million worth of net worth. That can be a person or it can be a number, but if it's a $200,000 project, that you're buying, a fourplex or fixplex, that's got to be in relation to. Time matters. The 180 days is a long time. Once you get that done, if they fail, for whatever reason they fail, the worst thing in the world is have to go back in line. It's exactly what, particularly, I don't want to say a for-profit developer, because I know we're talking about not-for-profit, but they put for-profit in there too. They will feel an obligation, particularly if they're young, to get that last pound of flesh. And they're going to go for it. And so you set up a path for them to do that. So time matters. If it doesn't close, then they ought to have the ability to, for the next year, whatever period of time you choose, to sell it for that price on the market. Not to the same buyer, because that buyer's gone. Nobody's sitting around for 180 or 210 days. They've moved on to the next project. So time matters. Exactions matter. There's an extensive list. People have worked their whole lives. They put these assets in trust. They want to give them to their kids. They want to give them to their wife. You can't do it. You got to sell it now. So as opposed to doing something where you built that legacy, it's gone. And now you end up with a taxable transaction. As a tax attorney, not a good idea. Finally, the terms matter. Substantial versus exact contract terms. That makes a big difference in law, and it depends how much time you want to spend litigating over it. So in summary, refundable deposits, inability to sell, going back in line, it really impacts these people. And I'm less worried about the big people, but the people in the middle, the small, this is their life. So that would be my thought. It's worth looking at some of these texts. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, and thank you to all four of you. Again, Planning, Housing, Parks Committee work session is scheduled for Monday, October 30th at 1:30 in the afternoon. There are no additional speakers for this public hearing, so this public hearing is now closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. The final public hearing on the schedule today is a public hearing on a supplemental appropriation for the FY24 operating budget, Montgomery County Government Department of Environmental Protection, for the amount of $813,710. The source of funds are state grants, the Chesapeake Bay Trust Urban Tree Grant. There are no public speakers for this hearing. Council action is scheduled immediately following this hearing, and this public hearing is now closed. And so with that, do I have a motion to move the supplemental?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Friedson, seconded over here by Councilmember Lutke. All those in favor? That is unanimous among all those present. And with that, colleagues, we are adjourned.
Now, there he is over there. And we're represented by, we get a twofer today in that we have our up county regional